a screen legend, filmmaker, environmentalist, and tireless champion of independent voices in cinema has died, revered for his magnetic presence on screen in classics like Butch Cassidy and The Sundance Kid, The Sting, and all. The President's Men, Redford's legacy is as much about art as it is about integrity. It was a huge loss to our community. Not only was he an incredible actor, he was one of the first guys to do political thrillers. We lost a legend. Today, the world just lost one of its greatest icons. Robert Redford, the Hollywood lion who defined an entire generation of cinema, has passed away at the age of 89. The headlines say it was peaceful, a quiet departure in the mountains of Utah. But the truth behind those headlines is much deeper than the simple words. He died peacefully in his sleep, because behind that calm image is a story filled with heartbreak, unspoken goodbyes, and a fortune that has now sparked heated speculation. Redford was one of the few actors who became more than a star. He became a symbol of American cinema itself. And yet when the cameras turned off, his life was marked by private losses, moments of haunting grief, and a love story that carried him through until the very end. Studio did not want me because I was not well known like he was. He was pretty well-known guy, and I just done a couple of films, and so therefore it had sat with the director George Roy Hill, the writer William Goldman, and Paul eventually, who I did not know had not met, and it sat with them to approve me to be able to be in the film, to go against the studio who tried to keep me out because they felt it was too imbalanced. He was well known and I wasn't. In the coming minutes, we're going to peel back the layers of his final chapter, the family tragedies that left permanent scars, the final words whispered to his wife, the staggering fortune now at the center of debate, and the question of what truly remains of Robert Redford's legacy. But before we go deeper, let's start where it all ended, his final moments. On the morning of September 16, 2025, Robert Redford's family released a short, carefully worded statement. Confirmed that the legendary actor had passed away in his beloved Sundance home, surrounded by loved ones, and that the family requested privacy, barely in his sleep at his home. Well, that's a good way to go, I guess. But I'll tell you, Robert Redford was great. He had a series of years that there was nobody better. This just happened, I guess. Wow. You call him asleep? Yeah. What movie would you say you like the best in? Well, you have a lot of them, honestly. I'd say he made 7 or 8 great movies. They were really great. There was a period of time when he was the hottest. I thought he was great. Music to the world. That was all. Just a few lines. The kind of formal announcement you might expect from Hollywood royalty. But behind the curtain, something more personal was happening. His wife, Sybil Sagers, shared her own words. Raw, unfiltered, and heartbreaking. She revealed that in those last days, Redford held her hand longer than usual. He told her he had found peace. But he also confessed something that revealed just how heavy his heart remained. He said he longed to see his 2 sons who had passed away years earlier. Imagine that, after decades of fame, power, and success, his last thoughts weren't about his movies or his money, but about being reunited with the children he had lost. To his wife, it felt like a quiet goodbye, even though she didn't realize it at the time. For the public, her words offered one of the only glimpses into the deeply private final hours of a man who rarely showed his emotions. But if those words hinted at anything, it was this: Redford's greatest struggles were not in front of the camera, but behind it. And that takes us into a chapter of his life many fans never truly saw. Robert Redford's career sparkled with classics like Butch, Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, The Sting, and All the President's Men. But hidden behind that glittering resume was a father who endured pain most of us can't imagine. His first son, Scott, was born in 1959. Just 2 months later, the infant tragically passed away from sudden infant death syndrome. Redford was only at the beginning of his career then, but the loss left a wound he carried for the rest of his life. He later admitted it pushed him into depression, shaping the way he saw the world. Years later, tragedy struck again. His second son, James, became a respected documentary filmmaker and activist working alongside his father on environmental causes. But James' life was marked by illness leading to multiple liver transplants and eventually a devastating cancer diagnosis. In 2020, James passed away at the age of 58. Redford's statement at the time was brief but gut-wrenching. The grief is immeasurable. With the loss of a child, 2 sons gone, and while he rarely opened up about his pain, it seeped into his art. Critics often point to Ordinary People, the film he directed about a family coping with the death of a child, as a reflection of his own sorrow. Looking back, it's clear Redford's cinematic brilliance was deeply intertwined with his private grief. And yet, even through tragedy, Hollywood continued to celebrate him, proving that his public image was never the full story. When the news of his passing broke, Hollywood paused. Jane Fonda, who starred with Redford in multiple films, admitted she couldn't stop crying. She called him a beautiful person in every way, a sentiment that carried the weight of decades of friendship. Miles Streck kept it short but powerful. One of the lions has passed. Legacy reports estimated Robert Redford's estate at around $200 million. That staggering number wasn't just from acting paychecks. It included his Utah estate in Sundance, once valued between 10 and 20 million, as well as other properties in California, Santa Fe, and previously New York. It also included royalties from his films, which continued to generate income through streaming platforms. Add to that an art collection rumored to be worth tens of millions, and the picture becomes clear. Redford didn't just leave behind a career. He left behind an empire. The big question is who inherits under Utah law. If no will is disclosed, his wife and daughters would. Most important chapter of his personal story. He often described her as his anchor, the person he trusted most when he felt insecure. She wasn't just his partner in private. She became his creative collaborator. In 2015, she launched The Way of the Rain, a multimedia project about climate change, and Redford lent his voice to narrations at major events. Their relationship wasn't about her standing behind him. It was about walking beside him. Even in his final years, while his health declined, she remained his constant, both in public and private. To the world, she was his wife. To him, she was his soulmate, the one who gave him peace after decades of heartbreak and pressure. And as much as people talk about his fortune or his films, it may be this marriage that ultimately defined his legacy. But before those final years of love and quiet, there was one last chapter in his public career. In 2018, Redford officially announced his retirement from acting, marking The Old Man and the Gun his final performance. At the time, he said he wanted to focus on directing and his private life, but he couldn't resist one last cameo, a surprise appearance in 2019's Avengers Endgame. It was a brief role, but for fans it felt like a farewell wave. After that, his appearances became rare. His last major public event came in Monaco at a gala for ocean conservation in 2019. The Photos from that night, him in a black tuxedo, Sybil in an elegant gown, are now remembered as some of his final images in front of an international audience. From then on, Redford retreated almost entirely from the spotlight, spending quiet days at his Sundance estate. He still worked on art and environmental projects with Sybil, even lending his voice to performances of The Way of the Rain as late as 2024. Friends say he lived simply, reading, talking with his wife, and occasionally advising projects at Sundance. For a man who once commanded Hollywood, his last years were defined not by fame but by simplicity, and when the announcement came that he had passed away in his mountain home, it felt fitting. Robert Redford had ended his journey exactly as he wanted, quietly, privately, and on his own terms. Robert Redford's death marks the end of a towering era in Hollywood. His films changed cinema. His Sundance Institute reshaped independent film, and his presence influenced generations of actors and directors. But as much as we celebrate his career, the real story of his life is more human, more fragile, and perhaps more meaningful. He was a man who endured devastating losses yet still found a way to create beauty. He was a legend who could have drowned in wealth and fame, yet found his greatest peace in a late marriage that gave him companionship and love. And in his final words, he didn't speak of fame, awards, or fortune. He spoke of longing to reunite with the sons he had lost. That is the image that lingers. Not Robert Redford the movie star, but Robert Redford, the father, the husband, the man who wanted peace. His legacy isn't just in his films, his estate, or even the institutions he built. It's in the fact that after decades of triumphs and tragedies, he left this world with love in his heart and peace in his soul. And maybe that is the greatest ending anyone could add.